One of the worst bills in the Washington state legislature this year opens the door for the state to have the power and control to do vaccine mandates across the state. This bill passed out of the Washington State House on Saturday, March 8th, and now it's moving over to the Senate where it's going to go through the process again. The bill has changed and it's already scheduled for a public hearing. So in today's video, we're going to talk about what did they do to this bill and how you can take action. Hey, everybody, I'm Julie Barrett. I'm the founder of Conservative Ladies of America, and we're back with another bill of the day. This is an update to a bill of the day that I did back in January. It's an update to House Bill 1531, which is one of the most opposed bills in Olympia this session. Now, this video has a call to action, so be sure that you watch to the very end. If you didn't watch my first video on House Bill 1531, I've got that linked down below for you if you want to go back and watch that. This video, I'm going to talk about the bill that was passed through the House on Saturday, March 8th. It is engrossed Substitute House Bill 1531, and they've made some changes to this bill that I think you might find quite interesting. The original bill was really short. It just said that the state had the power and authority to institute any kind of health measures like vaccines, really whatever they wanted to do. They would override local health departments. So if you live in a part of Washington that's a little bit more conservative, and maybe your city council, your county council has different laws and codes than the state government, this allows the state to override that. So that was a big concern. It's a short and sweet bill, but it was very bad, very powerful, and most people who appreciate their medical freedom do not like this bill. Well, what they've gone and done is they have added an entire new section called legislative intent. And when they add legislative intent to a bill after the fact, it is usually because there has been some kind of public opposition and outcry over the policy that they are trying to pass. So let's take a look at the legislative intent that they have added to House Bill 1531. They have added a new section that reads, "The legislature finds that communicable diseases remain a real threat to our communities, and many are increasing in prevalence and severity. There are over 100 notifiable conditions that are required to be reported to local and state public health, the vast majority of which are communicable diseases. The H1N1 virus or avian flu remains a nationwide threat, with 14 Washingtonians contracting this illness due to exposure to infected poultry in 2024. Tuberculosis remains prevalent despite the availability of effective treatment, with several local health jurisdictions experienced their first active cases of tuberculosis in over a decade. Sexually transmitted infection rates are also increasing." Well, go figure. Washington state encourages sexual promiscuity. They have legalized sex workers. They're teaching kids in school about different sex acts and sex identities. Is it any wonder that sexually transmitted diseases are increasing in Washington state? Not really. The new section continues. "Particularly syphilis and gonorrhea, both of which can have serious health impacts if left untreated. For example, untreated syphilis during pregnancy can result in congenital syphilis that increases rates of stillbirth, disability, and death in infants. To address these challenges, the ability for state and local health officials to educate the public about evidence-based measures that use the best available science is critical to control the spread of communicable diseases. Therefore, the legislature intends to ensure that the public receives timely, well-researched, evidence-based, and science-driven information to make informed choices so that they can take personal control of their health and the health of their families." Now, I want to pause here for a moment, because when they say well-researched, evidence-based, science-driven, we're talking about the whole Fauci era, CDC, trust the science. They were telling us that science showed that wearing masks would control the spread of COVID. They were sending kids to school, forcing little kids in school with their snotty noses to wear paper masks all day. I'm sorry, but there's nothing scientific. I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you that there's nothing scientific about that shows that that is going to control the spread of any kind of viruses or diseases or anything like that. In fact, what they probably did with the masks is make things a lot worse, especially for vulnerable populations. The last section of the legislative intent says the legislature does not intend by this enactment to modify, limit, or expand any existing requirement or establish any new requirement for any individual to receive any vaccine or take any other similar measure to control the spread of communicable disease, nor does the legislature intend by this enactment to modify, limit, or expand any existing authority or grant any new authority to establish any such requirement. I think it's really important that we look at this word intend. The legislature doesn't intend for these things to happen. Well, that's easy to say. That doesn't make it law. The intent is not part of the law. That's just what they want people to see and believe. That is the narrative that they want to push out about this policy in hopes, I'm sure, that the public will sort of back off on their opposition. But it really doesn't change anything about the bill. In fact, the rest of the bill is still very much the same. According to this bill, if the state decides to implement any kind of mandate, whether that's a vaccine mandate, a mask mandate, any type of social distancing mandates, a local jurisdiction cannot override that. If that is what the state declares, then all jurisdictions across the state of Washington would have to comply. So in 2020 and throughout the COVID era, you saw different counties doing different things. For example, King County, where Seattle is, had a vaccine passport situation. So if you went to a restaurant or a event facility, if you went to a sporting event or a concert or something like that, you had to have a vaccine passport in order to go to that establishment. So for me, while they had that in effect, I never took the COVID jab. So I did not go to restaurants in King County or to, events or concerts in King County during that time. I think they did it for about a year period. Now, if the state decided to implement something similar like that, every single county, every jurisdiction would have to comply with that mandate. So, as you can see, this bill gives broad authority to the state with any kind of health emergencies that they wish to declare. This would also go along with the governor's emergency powers, which I've talked about in previous videos. There was a sort of a bipartisan effort to reform the governor's emergency powers. The Democrats took that bill and gave even more power to the governor in an emergency than what he already has. He's come back out and said, well, I'm not going, because you guys couldn't agree, here's my promise to the citizens, which was a bunch of garbage. And so the governor of Washington state can still declare an emergency. He still has enormous emergency powers. And with this on top of that, it makes things really bad for citizens in Washington state if a health emergency was to happen. And based on what we're seeing this year in the legislature, I would definitely say that they are gearing up for something. There's another bill along these lines giving more authority and control to the governor, House Bill 1321, which allows the governor to have the authority to say no to outside militias that might be coming to help with a health emergency or a natural disaster or something like that. And that bill also passed before the cutoff this last week. So it's still very much alive. So a lot of bad bills that grant broad power and authority to the governor that should be very concerning to citizens. So here's where you need to take action. House Bill 1531 is already scheduled for a public hearing in the Senate Health and Long-Term Care Committee next Friday, March 21st at 8 a.m. You have until 7 a.m. on March 21st to either register your position of pro or con. Hopefully you are con and you are opposed to this legislation. You can also sign up to testify remotely or in person, or you can testify in writing. Now, here's what I would recommend. I would recommend that you register your position and you testify either in person or in writing. It doesn't have to be a long testimony. It can be very short and sweet and to the point of why you oppose this bill and encourage the senators not to pass the bill. So in the description below, I've got links for you to do all of this. If all you do is register your position, it's going to take you 30 seconds or less. Everybody has 30 seconds to register their opposition to this bill. If you can take an extra few minutes, please do a written testimony. And if you're willing to testify either in person or on Zoom, please sign up for that as well. Again, all the links are below. Please share this video with everyone in Washington that you know this is a very bad bill and we need as much citizen opposition against this as possible. So please share it far and wide. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for taking action, and I will see you in the next video.